What does it mean to strut your stuff, to peacock, to flaunt, to display confidence so loudly that it verges on absurdity? Today we have designer sneakers that cost more than rent, watches the size of sundials, and sunglasses worn indoors for no practical reason whatsoever. But none of these modern flexes hold a candle, nay a jewel-encrusted beacon, to history's most audacious fashion statement, the codpiece. Why did men of the Renaissance waltz about with glorified velvet luggage strapped to their loins? Was it truly about fashion, or were they overcompensating for something, say everything? And how did this once practical piece of clothing become a symbol of exaggerated masculinity, a subject of satire, and ultimately an enduring relic of historical humor? Join us as we unravel the saga of the codpiece, from its humble beginnings to its extravagant peak, its fall from grace, and its surprising modern echoes. What can this peculiar garment teach us about fashion, vanity, and the eternal human tendency to turn confidence into comedy? Let's find out. Picture a medieval man, his hose growing tighter, his tunic shorter, and his dignity hanging by a thread, quite literally. The codpiece began as a simple, unremarkable solution to a rather pressing problem, covering the awkward gap left between the two separate legs of his hose. It was, in its infancy, a piece of cloth with a single mission, modesty. But as with all things fashion, it wasn't long before necessity gave way to vanity. At first, no one questioned the little flap's humble purpose. But then someone, perhaps a tailor with a wicked sense of humor or a nobleman eager to make an impression, decided that if a codpiece must exist, it should do so with flair. And so, like a young noble at court, it began to assert itself, growing bolder, more pronounced, until suddenly men weren't just wearing codpieces, they were announcing them. By the time the Renaissance hit full stride, the codpiece had abandoned all notions of subtlety. It had transformed from a discreet cloth cover to a resplendent display of male bravado. No longer just a garment, it was a statement, a conversation starter, a reason for one's enemies to snicker behind their goblets of wine. This was an age where men clad in silk and velvet strutted about with codpieces that could double as luggage. Tailors embroidered them with gold thread, encrusted them with jewels, and, if contemporary accounts are to be believed, sometimes even designed them to store small personal items. A handkerchief, a few coins, why not? The codpiece had graduated from mere cloth to Renaissance pocket. And oh, how the satirists rejoiced. Playwrights and jesters wasted no time in making these fabric monuments to masculinity the butt of every joke. Theatrical performances leaned into the comedy, bestowing upon their more pompous characters the largest, most ridiculous codpieces imaginable. Writers like Rabelais took gleeful aim, using the codpiece as a literary device to poke fun at vanity, excess, and the ever-present human fear of inadequacy. But fashion is fickle, and so the codpiece, having enjoyed its time in the sun, began its inevitable decline. By the late 16th century, the trend had peaked, and society collectively decided that perhaps there were better ways to assert one's masculinity. The once mighty codpiece shrank, then withered, until one day it was simply gone. And yet, like any great relic of the past, it never truly disappeared. It lingered in paintings and old plays and whispered jokes passed down through generations. Centuries later, when costume dramas and historical comedies needed an easy laugh, the codpiece was waiting, ready to reclaim its role as a symbol of bygone bravado. Today, the codpiece lives on as a relic of the absurd, a comedic shorthand for historical excess. Monty Python, Blackadder, and countless period parodies have seized upon its ridiculousness, making it the ultimate visual gag. The larger the codpiece, the funnier the character. The more serious the wearer, the more ridiculous the effect. And then, of course, there was its unexpected resurgence in rock and roll. Somewhere between the 1970s and 80s, certain musicians decided that if Renaissance noblemen could strut about with exaggerated codpieces, so too could rock gods. From David Bowie's labyrinth look to the bombastic outfits of glam metal bands, the codpiece found itself repurposed as a theatrical tool of excess and camp. The codpiece's journey from practicality to parody follows a predictable, almost poetic trajectory. First, it existed out of necessity, a simple solution to a real problem. Then came ornamentation, when it stopped being merely functional and became an accessory of ego. And finally came ridicule, where its very excess made it an object of humor. Masculinity, too, followed a triadic path. The codpiece first symbolized strength, then became exaggerated, until eventually it was seen as laughable. What once stood as a declaration of virility became a subject of jest, a reminder that human vanity always risks tipping into self-parody. Even its historical legacy follows a triad: practical use, cultural memory, and ultimately parody. What was once worn in earnest is now worn only in jest. The codpiece may have vanished from everyday fashion, but it remains very much alive in cultural memory. It is a reminder that the line between pride and absurdity is often as thin as a strip of fabric. What began as a functional garment became a status symbol, then a joke, and now a staple of historical humor. Whether as a punchline in a Renaissance comedy or an accessory on a rock star's stage, the codpiece continues to serve one crucial function: making us laugh at the grandiosity of the past.